Hi everyone, this is Tanner and welcome to the NFL podcast. Today I'm going to be ranking my NFL head coaches and let's jump into things with tier number one, where I have Sean McVay of the Rams, Andy Reid of the Chiefs, Mike McDonald of the Seahawks, Kyle Shanahan with the Niners, and Mike Vrabel with the Patriots. So the thing that might shock people is the fact that I have Sean McVay number one over Andy Reid. A couple reasons for that. Both of them have been in a couple of Super Bowls. Yes, Andy Reid has won more Super Bowls, three compared to Sean McVay's one. But why I have McVay over Reid is that both of these guys are the offensive gurus. But I think McVay has done a better job recently. You look at this past season, this Rams team was just in the NFC title game, one game away from the Super Bowl. You had Matthew Stafford playing at an MVP level. He won the MVP, right? This offense was just amazing on all the stuff they got to do. This has been McVay year after year. Also think too, with McVay, yes, the offense is fantastic. I mean, the way he's able to run play action, just all the creativity. He's one of the best at doing it. But I also think too the culture is pretty good, and that is something that I am going to mention a bit about this culture. What do I mean by that? I think there's a lot of moments this season where the Rams were able to win some tight games, some close games, some physical games that I do think needs to get attributed to McVay. A lot of people look at him as this offensive genius, but also think there's kind of this element and toughness that he brings. Whether it be traveling over to London and demolishing the Jacksonville Jaguars when the Jaguars were on a hot streak earlier this season, that was an impressive win. You look at the win they had against the Bears in the divisional round, that was a more defensive game than people expected. So I think McVay, he's really well known for his offense and for a good reason. I think he's one of the best offensive minds in NFL history. But also think that grit, that culture, is something that McVay has too. So yeah, I have Sean McVay number one. He's just one of my favorite people in the NFL. His personality and just the way he interacts with people, he seems like an excellent leader. Someone here who really, yes, has his kind of viewpoints, but he's able to kind of be flexible. And I just think the way he's built this staff out is really impressive. Hiring Chris Shula as defensive coordinator, that worked out really well. So a lot to like here about Sean McVay, and he's number one. And Andy Reid, number two. I just think Andy Reid's offense is the past couple years have not really been there. Yes, this team made the Super Bowl last season, but even then, they lost Eagles pretty badly. I think the Chiefs' offense in 2024 and 2025 has just not been that great. And that creativity, that kind of spark that Andy Reid had, say, even back in 2023 when this team won the Super Bowl, I just don't think has really been there. So, I just think that the Chiefs' offense has just kind of been Yes, there's a lack of playmakers, but you still have, Travis Kelce. I think Xavier Worthy has some good potential of his speed. You still have Mahomes, who I think is the best quarterback in the NFL. There's still a lot to like with the Chiefs' offense. It just has been kind of issues. And I also think, too, the other thing as well is you could say that the Chiefs' lack of playmakers is also kind of falling a bit on coaching. Andy Reid has been with the Chiefs since, 2013, 2012. He has a voice in this organization. So, I feel like he could have maybe made a move or maybe talked to, the GM Brett Veach about that. I do think that is something worthy of mentioning. So that could have been better. I also think, to the Chiefs, they had some tough losses this past season, a couple games that you would have liked to win, they just didn't. I look at that Thanksgiving game where they lost to the Cowboys. Not only is it a fun game to watch, but the Chiefs lost, and I felt like that was a game they would have won the past couple of seasons. So it's just this offense and this lack of clutchness is why Andy Reid's not number one. But why is he number two, right? I'm really talking about a lot of the downsides because I think the upsides with Andy Reid are really, really great. I think he is someone here where you look at his history of winning Super Bowls, of winning three Super Bowls, right, with the Chiefs, the success that they've had here. I think that he is someone that has done an excellent job of coordinating and getting coordinators. Hiring Steve Spagnuolo to be the defensive coordinator was a fantastic move. He did that, I believe, in 2020. And I think that's been one of the best coaching related moves in the NFL in the past 20 years. Getting Spags as your DC was an excellent hire by Andy Reid. And I do think that, yes, the offense has regressed a bit, but we still look at it in the past couple of seasons. There's still a lot to like. And he is someone here who is really, kind of the sole person for that offense. He does have coordinators, but there's just a lot to like about Andy Reid here, and the fact that he is someone who's this new coach of this dynasty, I do think deserves a lot of respect. So I do have Andy Reid at number two here. Then at number three, I do have Mike Macdonald. The Seahawks won the Super Bowl. Right, he's coming off that Super Bowl victory where he did an excellent job with this defense. I mean, the Seahawks were flying around the field in the Super Bowl, and I think what makes Mike Macdonald so good is the fact that he is someone that really did a great job of using players and using them in different strengths. You know, you look at Devon Witherspoon, he's a cornerback who are usually players in coverage, but Devon Witherspoon had, I believe, 2 sacks in the Super Bowl. You know, like he's able to use players and able to say, hey, you do this, you do that. His ability to use, players in a multitude of ways, I think is really exceptional. And he also just seems like a good leader. Very chill guy, very much straight to the point, but also seems like someone who cares about his players. The bond he has with his quarterback, Sam Darnold, is immaculate here. I like a lot about Mike Macdonald. And I was close with either him or Andy Reid. Who do I kind of put here because they're different. Andy Reid's the offensive guy. I mean, Andy Reid's been coaching elite even back to his days with the Eagles in the early 2000s. But then you have Mike Macdonald, who's new on the scene, right? Mike Macdonald just completed year 2. And I just give the nod to Andy Reid because I think what Andy Reid did in 2019, right? In 2022, 2023, winning the Super Bowls then, right? The Chiefs are still a very successful team despite a down year. So I just do have Reid over Macdonald. I went back and forth them in my head. But I just do give Andy Reid kind of the nod just due to the success he's had. If Mike Macdonald was maybe in year 4 or 5 or had, more experience, I would put him over Reid, but I'm just giving Reid the nod there. Alrighty, then we have Kyle Shanahan here and Mike Vrabel. Like a lot about Shanahan's game. You could argue he could be 1, 2, or 3. Reasons why he's not. The coaches above him do have a ring, and I think with McVay and Shanahan, McVay beat Shanahan a couple of times, right? Andy Reid has gotten the best of Shanahan twice in the Super Bowl. That's been a very fun coaching matchup to watch. It's kind of funny because in today's NFL, people are looking for what's the next best rivalry in terms of quarterbacks. A lot of people say it's Mahomes versus Allen. I actually think Kyle Shanahan versus Andy Reid has been very, very fun to watch. You have 2 excellent offensive head coaches. Shanahan runs the play-action game. Andy Reid's more of that West Coast kind of spread it out. Both of them can really have some creative stuff. And it's been cool to see them go against each other twice in the Super Bowl. Really fun coaching matchup there. So, yeah. So, Reid has beat Shanahan twice. And then Mike Macdonald has really had Kyle Shanahan's number. You look at this year where they beat the Niners twice. Once in the regular season, once in the playoffs. And then you look back even when Mike Macdonald's with the Ravens in 2023, he really shut down Kyle Shanahan's offense. And the fact that these 2 guys are in the same division, that's why I have the nod of Macdonald, that he's been able to kind of get Shanahan here. And I also think, too, Kyle Shanahan not getting a Super Bowl ring does count for something here. I think that he, has done an excellent job of really just getting the most out of his teams to a degree. Look at this past season, the fact that this team was in the divisional round here was really impressive with all the injuries they had, but you would like to see him have a Super Bowl ring. And I do think there are times in both Super Bowl losses with the Niners, you could say, hey, Kyle Shanahan could have done a better job. But still an excellent just head coach here. He's done really an amazing job getting the most out of his players and just has one of the better offenses to watch. And then you have Mike Vrabel here, who's just a great culture dude, shown that New England taking his team to the Super Bowl. Yes, they lost in the Super Bowl, and it wasn't really close. But the fact that this team was there is still impressive. I really think he does a great job maximizing players, maximizing talent. We saw this with the Titans as well. Mike Vrabel gets the most out of his teams, and that can result in his team winning games when, the other team might have more talent, but his teams can pull it off. And I just think watching him in interviews and whatnot, he's done an excellent job of just building a culture here, and I think that's just something you really have to respect. So those are the top 5 for me. I think that's a good top 5. You have 3 guys with a ring, and then you have Shanahan and Vrabel. I used to be low on Mike Vrabel, honestly. Last year, I probably had him outside the top 5, top 10, but really what he did, I thought this past season was really immaculate, and I do want to recognize it. So that's Tier 1. Then we move on into Tier 2. So this has elite elements. This one's interesting. So we have Dan Campbell of the Lions, DeMeco Ryans with the Texans, Sean Payton with the Broncos, Matt LaFleur with the Packers, and then Ben Johnson with the Bears. Okay, so number 6 I have is Dan Campbell, and Campbell was really close to tier 1. A lot about what I said about Mike Vrabel, I think really applies to Dan Campbell. They are excellent culture builders, just guys who, Mike Vrabel and Dan Campbell, they're not offensive guys, they're not defensive guys, they just do a great job running their teams. So why is Campbell not higher? Well, a couple of reasons. I think first of all that Campbell did struggle with filling out the coordinators this past season. He lost both his offensive and defensive coordinator. And I thought that the guys he got to replace him this past season, he could have done a better job here. And I do think with Dan Campbell, I love his aggressiveness on fourth down, going for it right. That's a Dan Campbell mentality. I do think sometimes, though, it's not always the best to do. And I think we saw that in the 2023 NFC Championship game where the Lions were up against the Niners and ended up losing that game. But what to love about Dan Campbell, right? There's a lot to really like about him. The job he did transforming the Detroit Lions, I don't think can be understated. And I think could be worthy of him being in the top 5. And you look at this Lions team, 2020, no Dan Campbell. 2021 he comes in. I think they won 3 or 4 games. 2022 they win 9 games, almost make the playoffs, knock off the Packers in Week 18, keeping Green Bay out of the playoffs. 2023 you're in the NFC Championship game, and last year you had, and then 2024 you had an excellent season, make the NFC Divisional round. Now this past season you did miss the playoffs, but still, I mean, the fact that this team's been in the playoffs, was in the NFC title game, is amazing. Like, this team in 2020 was not good. That would be like, say, a team like the Jets, a team or an organization that people really look down on, if the Jets were in the AFC title game by like 2028, 2029. Like, that's the type of turnaround Dan Campbell has done with this Lions team. And I think it's just really amazing how he's done it. I mean, this team just really had no identity early in 2020. What is this team? And then Dan Campbell comes in, gets this physical, tough defense, these playmakers here, has just done an excellent job. I think that there's a sense of getting guys who people doubted, training for Jared Goff. Goff's been a very nice quarterback for Detroit. You look at drafting Jahmyr Gibbs, a lot of people, including myself, did not like that pick. Dan Campbell here, now also credit to the GM Brad Holmes on those decisions, but Campbell's kind of had this voice and this vision for this team. I think he's an excellent players coach. He was a former player. Again, another similarity with him and Mike Vrabel. Vrabel was a former player, but yeah, at the end of the day here, Dan Campbell has just really done a great job with the Lions here. Yes, even after a disappointing season. And the fact that the Lions are one of these teams that you talk about, who's a top NFC contender, the fact that the choice mentioned is a huge credit to him. Then DeMeco Ryans with the Texans here, just awesome defensive minded. I mean, this Texans defense has really been elite the past couple of seasons under him. I mean, you look at the guys up front, Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter, excellent pass rush. This secondary is just so tough and physical. A lot to really love, and I think that is his elite element as a head coach, is that, defense. I do think where DeMeco Ryans comes under a bit of fire is the offense. He's really struggled to find an offensive coordinator. You had Bobby Sloak in 2023, but then after an off year in 2024, they move on from Slowick. Slowick recently got hired by the Dolphins, so that should be fun to watch. Then this past year, you hired Nick Caley from the LA Rams, part of Sean McVay's staff, and Caley did fine. And then, this team season ended after, a year where this team ran the table. You're in the playoffs. You won a game that ends because the offense couldn't do its job. So I do think there's a lot to talk about DeMeco. I like him as a leader. I think the fact that this team had a turnaround this season is impressive. But you really got to wonder about the offense here. Can this offense just kind of get its rhythm? And that does fall a bit on DeMeco, in my opinion. Then you have Sean Payton here with the Broncos, who I really do like here with Sean Payton. I have him as my number 8 head coach. I think with Sean Payton, he's kind of interesting because he's an offensive-minded guy. That's how he got his name for the Saints, really having those offenses under Drew Brees and winning a Super Bowl against Peyton Manning, the Colts, due to the offense here. But I also think that with Sean Payton, he also has kind of an interesting culture. This is a tough physical team. You watch the Broncos this year, the number 1 seed in the AFC. He did really an excellent job of just having this team playing physical, tough, really, in it. I think that's a huge, credit to Sean Payton. Also filling out this staff. That's something that I really have, said is a negative for D'Amico and Dan is their issues to kind of get the staff going. I think Sean Payton's done an awesome job getting Vance Joseph to be his defensive corner, and getting that defensive side taken care of. But a lot of these Broncos games are not as high scoring as you might think. They're kind of lower scoring, but I think Sean Payton does a really good job of just knowing the team and knowing how to play them. I always go back to that Eagles game this season where the Broncos beat the Eagles in Philadelphia, and a lot of the reason that was able to be done was because the Broncos play great defense, able to play to the Eagles' weaknesses, and they kind of chip away at teams, right? That's how this offense works. And I also think, too, Sean Payton as a head coach has done a great job with Bo Nix developing him. So a lot to like about Sean Payton here. Great culture, kind of is able to kind of look at a team and say, how can I find their weaknesses? He might not be putting up 40 points a game, though he can do that, but he more so plays his style. And then you have Matt LaFleur with the Packers, who I know it's going to be an interesting spot because I know some people have mixed opinions on Matt LaFleur, even Packers fans. Here's the deal with Matt LaFleur. I kind of view him honestly similar to his quarterback Jordan Love, where they have highs, but they have some low lows. But why is Matt LaFleur number 9? I think Matt LaFleur has done a great job, his head coaching tenure, right? Coming in 2019, having Aaron Rodgers, getting him 2 more MVPs in 2020 and 2021. A lot of people say that was solely Aaron Rodgers for his MVPs. Yes, Rodgers did a lot of the work there, but people forget before Matt LaFleur came here, Mike McCarthy and this Packers offense was stale. Matt LaFleur comes in, lights that spark. Well, recently, I think Matt LaFleur gets so underrated with the job he did with Jordan Love. I mean, Jordan Love came out as a raw prospect, and he has just done an excellent job developing Jordan Love. I thought Jordan Love had a really good season this past year. I thought he was probably the 7th best quarterback in the NFL just based off last season alone. He was MVP early in the year. I think Matt LaFleur's done a great job with this offense. Again, he's one of these guys who runs his Shanahan type of offense, play action, outside running. We see him succeed with Josh Jacobs. His playmakers go down this year. He still has him succeed. I think Matt LaFleur just has done a really good job with the offense. And then I think culture-wise, it's a good culture in Green Bay. I mean, this team made the playoffs. They made it every year for Matt LaFleur except 2022. I don't know. I've just been impressed with Matt LaFleur. I understand that sometimes his play calling's not always the best, but I think he's done a really good job overall, and I'm just impressed with him. I think he just has been a very nice hire for the Packers. And if the Packers were to fire him, which they did not, he's still on the team, and I believe they signed him to an extension. But if he got fired, he would have been hired like that, and I think would have been such a good hire for so many teams. And then we have his rival, and actually rival in a kind of a sense here, Ben Johnson with the Bears. There's kind of something between them. I don't know what it is, but some tension. I don't know. Ben Johnson, I was kind of curious where I'd put him because he only has 1 year as a head coach. But then he had excellent years as a coordinator for Detroit. So it's like, where do I put him? And I put him at 10. And that feels about fair because he had a really good season, right? I thought he was able to get Caleb Williams back on track, really utilize the Bears playmakers well, have high-scoring games. So one element I really want to focus in on Ben Johnson is the tight end, Colston Loveland. When Loveland was drafted, I didn't really love the pick. I thought Loveland was a good play in the draft, but I was kind of in with it. But he utilized him so well, such an excellent job here. That was something that just impressed me so much with Ben Johnson's offensive spectacularness was doing that here, just making Loveland work out. I think another example of Ben Johnson being a great genius with the Bears is the running back situation. DeAndre Swift was your starter. He was okay, but then they promote Kyle Monangai, and Monangai really helped this team in the running game. I also think, too, the culture is something here that's also very underrated. This was a tough, physical Bears team. They were in a lot of games. I mean, you have that win over Green Bay, that comeback game in the wild card round, playing the Rams tough, even though they did lose in the divisional round. Like, there's just a lot to love about Ben Johnson. I think we've seen him take a lot of that tough and gritness that Dan Campbell's had, if I can point correctly. There we go, right? A lot of that toughness and grit that Dan Campbell's had, Ben Johnson has carried over with him. And that surprised me about Ben Johnson because I knew the offense was going to be pretty good. But that toughness and just that culture and just this Bears team was in it to the last second really impressed me. That's something I thought was really great here. But yeah, I really like this element of coaches. And I think that they can get things, to be tier 1. If Dan Campbell can kind of nail these coordinators, right? If D'Amico can kind of get this offense going. If Sean Payton, I think sometimes with him, you would like to see some more creativeness on the offense, more explosive offense. Matt LaFleur sometimes more consistency, and then Ben Johnson just kind of more of the same. But yeah, really like these coaches here. And then we go to tier three, which is keep you in playoff talk. And let's start here. I view Kevin O'Connell with the Vikings and Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers very, 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 very similarly. I think they are very identical in the way that their teams have been playing and the way and their results. But kind of why do I have them where they're at here at 11 and 12? Both KOC and Jim Harbaugh, and for Jim Harbaugh, I am mainly just talking about his years with the Chargers. What he did with the 49ers in the 2010s was great, but I'm talking about the Chargers, so I just kind of want to clarify that. But KOC and Jim Harbaugh, both of them, have not had a playoff win with their respective teams, but they have done a great job of just kind of elevating the talent they have. And for Kevin O'Connell, it's been this offense, and Jim Harbaugh, it's been the defense. I mean, Harbaugh and this defense, yes, a lot of it's the coordinators with Jesse Minter, but this team has done a great job on defense, just playing tough, physical. A lot of the players they've been getting the most out of here, which I think is very impressive with Jim Harbaugh. Also think, too, that Justin Herbert has played pretty well under Harbaugh for the most part. A lot of the issues with the Chargers are the offensive line getting injured and whatnot, but I think that you saw wide receiver Quentin Johnson really kind of take a step forward this past year under Harbaugh. I think, too, Lat McConkey's been a very nice receiver for the Chargers. So there's a lot to like about this team, especially that defense, just playing tough, playing physical. Chargers are going to be a team that's really hard to beat. And we saw that in the playoffs. Even when the Chargers lost to New England this past season in the wild card, it was a tough game. New England only got about one touchdown, I believe, is very low scoring. So this is a team that's very, very hard to win against. It is doable, but they're a team that's going to be tough. And then the Vikings, on the other hand, they've had a great defense with Brian Flores, and he's been an amazing highest defensive coordinator, but we've seen Kevin O'Connell just really maximize this offense here, have great years from Kirk Cousins at quarterback in 2022, Sam Darnold in 2024. Getting Justin Jefferson, really having him hitting his high potential. I mean, Jefferson's had some amazing years under KOC, right? We've seen the running game play very well here. So there's a lot to like about Kevin O'Connell. I think the work he's done overall with this team. But at times, you would like to see kind of both of these coaches kind of have those staple wins. They can have them during the regular season, right? We've seen that time and time again. I go back to 2022 when the Vikings had that incredible comeback against the Colts. I look at this year, the Chargers, when they beat the Chiefs in Brazil, what an amazing win. The Vikings going on this fantastic win at the end of the regular season with J.J. McCarthy. McCarthy looking better. Vikings going to 9 wins this season is incredible. The Chargers, being able to beat the Broncos this year, just getting those tough divisional wins. Both of these coaches and both of these teams, the Chargers and Vikings, have had some very great moments. But it's just getting to the next level. And I think both of these coaches have done a great job with this culture and these rosters. And these are two teams that just have very good players on them, but just hitting the next step. So that's why they're in tier 3 and not tier 2 or tier 1. But I think they could elevate them. And I view them very, very similarly here. Yes, there's some issues that they have. I know some fans can be upset with them. But I think the job they have done making you a team that can just keep you in the playoff talk, as the name of this tier is, I think is impressive. Nick Sirianni falls here. Next up. So, Sirianni's quarterback 13, and with him, it's kind of interesting because I'm an Eagles fan, right? And here's the thing with Sirianni. I'll always kind of have a soft spot for him. Nick Sirianni, I remember kind of during his introductory press conference, he was someone that was struggling with kind of speaking. And as someone here who, when I was younger, had issues with speaking and went to speech therapy, right, I could kind of relate to that in a sense. And then overall, like, Sirianni's just been someone that I think overall has just done a great job embodying the city of Philadelphia, that toughness, that grit, that personality here. He is someone who loves to be an Eagle. You can tell that it means a lot to him. And as a fan, it's just awesome to see that. The fact that he's brought a Super Bowl to Philadelphia is amazing. So there's a lot of stuff, kind of on the personal level, that I like about him. But that can only rank him so far. What are the downsides? I think Sirianni is kind of what does he do on the team? Because he doesn't call offensive plays. He did in 2021. It did not go well. They didn't bring in Shane Steichen in who's also on this list. Hello, Shane Steichen, right? At the end here with the Colts. Um, so you bring Shane Steichen, he does a great job. Then he leaves after 2022, after you make the Super Bowl. In 2023, they have Brian Johnson as the offensive coordinator. He does not work, so you fire him. Then you bring in Kellen Moore. Moore here does a great job in 2024. You win the Super Bowl. Awesome. But then he gets hired for the Saints. So then you're like, okay, what do we do here? Then this past year, bringing Kevin Patullo, things do not work out. You fire him, and then you bring in Sean Mannion now to be next year's offensive coordinator. So we'll see how that goes. So like, okay, that's exhausting with the offensive coordinator. Even though when Nick Sirianni was hired, he was the Colts offensive coordinator. So it's like, okay, if you don't call plays, what does he do? He has not handled the defense. That's been Vic Fangio, who's done a really good job, and that's a great hire. But it's like, okay, so what about the culture, right? Maybe this guy's a Dan Campbell, Mike Vrabel type, right? Well, not really, because there's issues about the culture. I feel like you've seen so many reports about drama in Philadelphia, so it's like, it's frustrating because Sirianni's gotten you to 2 Super Bowls. But the seasons he hasn't done that, they've not been good. Or they just had so much drama. 2021, you lose in a wild card to the Bucks. 2022, you make the Super Bowl. Even though you lose it. 2023, you lose in a wild card to the Bucks. 2024, you win the Super Bowl. This past year, you lose to the Niners in the wild card. So they're on top of the world, or this the sky is falling, right? It's just so up and down, and just it's kind of just frustrating on where to put Sirianni because there's a lot of good and a lot of bad. So why do I have him at 13? Well, at the end of the day here, I do think going to 2 Super Bowls and winning one is something that I did not want to discount, but I do think the drama and question marks keep him here. I think last year, honestly, I'll probably have him in tier 2 or tier 1. I would maybe have him in as coach number 6, 7, or 5, kind of maybe like if I were to do this last year, I would maybe either probably have him. I would probably have had Dan Campbell where Mike Vrabel is, and then probably Sirianni, then D'Amico, then Sean, or something like that. That's why I would probably had Sirianni, but then this past season just really bumped him down after a very turbulent season for Philadelphia. So that's why I have him. There's a lot to like here as an Eagles fan, but there's a lot of issues. And the one thing I would always say is if Nick Sirianni got fired, do I think any team would hire him? Not really. And that's a really kind of big kind of, you know, thing against him. But he's also had a lot of success with Philadelphia. So just very interesting to see here with him. But that's where he ranks. And then we go to the AFC South here for Liam Cohen with the Jags and then Shane Steichen with the Colts here. Very impressive with Liam Cohen's season here with the Jaguars, his first year. Things took a while to get going, but then when they did, he did a really good job. Got to the playoffs, lost round 1, but got there. Trevor Lawrence started to play better. As I said a couple times on the podcast, the Jaguars and Bears remind me a lot of each other. You have a former number 1 overall pick quarterback. Bears, you have Caleb Williams. Jaguars, you have Trevor Lawrence. Bears and Jaguars both had a first-year head coach who's offensive. Bears, you had Ben Johnson. Jaguars, you have Liam Cohen. Bears were just a bit better this year. They were able to win a playoff game. Jaguars lost in a wild card. But I just kind of view teams very similarly. And I'm interested to see how year 2 goes from Liam Cohen. I thought the running game this year was pretty solid. Again, Trevor Lawrence getting things going. What impressed me about Cohen was his ability to kind of really kind of get this wide receiver core going in different ways than I expected. I thought this would be the Brian Thomas year, but it was more of kind of Parker Washington and then training for Jacoby Myers and having that work out. And I think overall, too, Cohen did a great job hiring coordinators. Both his offensive coordinator, Grant Udinski, and defensive coordinator, and Anthony Campanelli, were both interviewed to be head coaches. So he does a great job filling out his staff. I thought the offense was good in a lot of ways. Getting to the playoffs is huge for Jacksonville. Hosting a playoff game, winning the AFC South is impressive. You just do want to see kind of more so more consistency here. But I thought keeping playoff talk is a good, tier for him because that's probably what's going to be next year. The Jaguars are going to be one of these teams, and rightfully so, who do you want to have in the postseason. And I'm really interested to see how Cohen can do because I see kind of a bit of Kevin O'Connell, who's, over here in this tier, right? I also see a bit of Matt LaFleur. Where can Cohen be here and for 4, 5, 6 years? Can he be just a very good offensive mind for the Jaguars, helping Trevor Lawrence develop, having this offense really reach its potential, and having that consistency? The Jags the past couple of years have had good moments. Can they just kind of build upon it? And Shane Steichen is a very, very interesting coach because his time with the Colts has been very up and down. 2023, He comes in. He has Gardner Minshew as his quarterback. Minshew actually plays very well under him. He actually had a very nice year under him. And you were one game away from the playoffs, but you lose to the Texans. Okay, then 2024, you are ready to go with Anthony Richardson, but he has injury issues up and down. And then you kind of just have a kind of year. And then this past year, you have Daniel Jones, and his team looked like they were going to be the number one team in the AFC. That I believe were 8-2. This offense was going in all cylinders, boom, boom, boom. But then this team falls apart, and then you kind of were left with no playoffs. Now, a lot of that was due to the Daniel Jones injury. You do bring in Philip Rivers. I thought he did overall a pretty good job. But kind of talking about Shane Steichen, he reminds me a bit of kind of early career Kyle Shanahan. Well, Kyle Shanahan, early on in his career, had a lot of great offensive playmakers. He was able to kind of do a lot of stuff very well. But he had kind of trouble closing things out. But then he kind of got to that 2019-2021 season. He was able to kind of get things going and establish himself as a really good coach. And I think Shane Steichen's close to there. I think there's moments where his offense is very good, using running back Jonathan Taylor, using his receivers, using all his playmakers. There's times where, Shane Steichen's really just able to kind of just get things going, and it's a very quick offense. It's very West Coast. It's very boom, 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 fast and quick and stuff like that. And you really like what you see. But then there's times where it's like, okay, there's some games where the offense can't get going. I look at that Chiefs game this past season, or I think one thing he's really struggled with is the coordinating. I think Lou Anarumo, bringing him as defensive coordinator, the defense really struggled this year. I think that's one reason, too, the Colts missed the playoffs, was the defense. I just don't think it was that good. So it's tough for Steichen because there's a lot I like about him. And I think he can do a good job for you. I think he can be someone that can be a really nice coach. But I just do have some questions about him finishing things off. Kind of reminds me a lot of the Kyle Shanahan thing, like I said, just kind of maybe on a smaller scale, or, kind of a couple tiers down below. I'm interested to see how next year goes for Steichen. I would give him 1 to 2 more years, at least 2 more years, and see. But if he gets fired, he would get hired pretty quickly. And what would be interesting, honestly, and I'm kind of saying this as maybe a prediction, is if he gets fired after this year, maybe the Colts win 8 games, but they're in a tough division with the Texans, right? I think the Titans could be really good. The Jaguars, we talked about just now, being a great team under Cohen. But anyways, Shane Steichen gets fired. So does Nick Sirianni with the Eagles. And the Eagles hire Shane Steichen to be their head coach. I would love that, right? And I think a lot of other teams would like Shane Steichen as their head coach. I just think there's some question marks he needs to figure out, but I do like him. Then we have tier number 5. This is hot or cold. So these are coaches that when things look great, they look great, but when they don't, they don't. Let's start with John Harbaugh here now, the Giants. As a Ravens fan, there's a lot of great moments with Harbaugh. I think he is someone that when the Ravens look dominant, you feel on top of the world. You feel like you can beat any team. There just is some issues he has with Clark management. I'm saying, okay, how are things at here with this? I think there's sometimes here we have trouble gauging the game flow. Should he be more aggressive? Should he be more safe? Things like that. Some of those decisions that I think Dan Campbell can do very well. These other head coaches, I just think John Harbaugh struggles with. Overall, he's with the Giants now. We'll see how that goes. Like I think Harbaugh, the culture is solid. It's fine. We'll see how things can kind of go. I could see this either being Mike Vrabel, where Harbaugh does an excellent job and Giants are back in the Super Bowl, or I could see this just being okay. We'll see though. But yeah, Harbaugh ultimately tier 5. When he looks great, he looks great. But when he doesn't, he doesn't. Dave Canales with the Panthers, very similar thing. I mean, this Panthers team is so interesting because this past season they had moments where this offense looked really good, right? You had, and this team as well, you had that amazing game against the Falcons in Atlanta. You had the game against, the Packers where this team won. I believe in Green Bay, that was an amazing win. They beat the Rams during the regular season, which was a fantastic win. A lot of great moments from the Panthers, but then they had moments where they got, destroyed by the Bills, destroyed by the Patriots. They had some very bad losses, some weird losses to the Saints. Shout out Kellen Moore here on the end of this list. But yeah, so Carolina's just kind of an interesting position here, and I think Canales, the offensive play calling is kind of interesting because he comes from the kind of Kyle Shanahan play action background, but he doesn't do a lot of it. So West Coast offense, and I don't know, the offense isn't bad. He had Tyrell McMillan win Offensive Rookie of the Year under him. This past season, I thought Bryce Young looked better this year under him. But you want to see the offense have an identity and a rhythm to it. I think this team really lacks rhythm in Carolina. it kind of seems like I said game to game of how good, how bad are they. So we'll see about Canales. I think as a culture, he's a good dude. He seems like a nice person. He seems honest. I think he speaks well. Like I think he's a good communicator here. But we'll kind of see where things go on this offense here. I could either see him getting fired in a year or two, or see him rising up. I do think though he could be like a good, like I think he has good football mind and insights. Just can he piece it together? They have Mike McCarthy with the Steelers. Still kind of a bit weird to say, but this is where I put him. Him and Harbaugh are kind of in a similar boat where both of them won a Super Bowl in the early 2010s, but that was so long ago. You have to look at what they do now. And I just think McCarthy is just lack of aggression, good offense, okay, but there's just times where he plays it too safe. There's just not that element to go for it here as much. I want to see Mike McCarthy really bring the juice and energy this year. In his press conference, it really seemed like he did that. He was emotional about being with the Steelers. It seems like it means a lot to him, which is cool. Can that translate to the field? That's my main question. I think McCarthy, like Harbaugh, was very good in the 2010s. That's when Mike McCarthy won the Super Bowl in 2010. But the NFL has changed so much since then. It's gone a lot more aggressive, and you have to kind of push the ball down the field more and go for it more. And you have to really make things happen. And we'll just see. I do like that the fact that they hired Patrick Graham as their defensive coordinator is a really good move. You bring him in from the Raiders. I like that move a lot. So I do want to highlight that. But we'll just see how things go with McCarthy. And then we have Brian Schottenheimer of the Cowboys. Kind of funny we have a Steeler head coach next to the Cowboys head coach, knowing the Cowboys and Steelers rivalry and what's been going on there. Schottenheimer, I thought the first year he had was pretty good. I was someone who was a bit unsure how things would look under Brian Schottenheimer in year one, but it was good overall. But he very much fits the name of this tier. He had some great wins during this season. It's like, wow, with a beat. Beating the Chiefs on Thanksgiving, which I thought was an excellent win. Beating the Eagles at home. This team has some very, nice wins. Winning against the Raiders on Monday Night Football, winning a duel against the Giants. This team had some really great stuff going on. But then you also had some moments where you would kind of fall flat, like against the Cardinals on prime time. So it's weird. For every great win, you had a really wacky loss for the Cowboys. And that's how I would put it. I do think diving into Schottenheimer a bit more, I think the offense was really excellent under him. Dak Prescott was amazing. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens. What a year from George Pickens. What a trade that was. Hopefully, if you're a Cowboys fan, you hope they re-sign Pickens. But yeah, that was really good. I thought the running game was really good with Javonte Williams. Williams seemed like things were done. You bring him in, he did a really good job overall. So there's some really good stuff here. I thought the culture was great with him in the locker room. The Cowboys dealt with some really heavy stuff this year, and I thought he did a good job of rallying the players. And there's a lot to like about Schottenheimer. I just think you want to see some consistency more in kind of the way this team attacks games and the offense. But I could see him kind of maybe around that Shane Steichen area where I think both, like Steichen, Schottenheimer does a good job of using different offensive pieces. We'll see, though. And then we have Kellen Moore with the New Orleans Saints. I didn't know what to play Kellen Moore because he's only had 1 year as a head coach. Team with the Saints started off kind of iffy under Spencer Rattler, but then you start the rookie Tyler Shough, who plays really good, and you kind of go on a hot streak. And I originally did not rank him because I'm like, is it too early? But I like him here because the first half of the season was cold. The second half was a lot better. So we'll see where things end up. Kellen Moore runs kind of the West Coast offense based around timing. He used to play quarterback, so I think he could do a good job with Tyler Shough. I could see him rising up here and kind of reminds me a bit of Kevin O'Connell, just good personality, can lead a room well. So that's where I have Kellen Moore. And then the final tier of today's video is going to be a lot of question marks. And this is the bottom tier of head coaches. So we got Kevin Stefanski here, who I originally had above, but I have a lot of question marks about how does the culture do his play calling sometimes, or he's not calling plays, but his offensive design sometimes and things like that. I think he has some good moments, right? He did some good stuff with the Browns, but more recently it's been bad than good. And I think, too, that, yes, you could say he's with the Browns. He didn't have a lot of playmakers. Let's bring up Sean Payton. Sean Payton, the Broncos did not have a ton to work with this year. Sure, he had Cortland Sutton. I like Bo Nix, as I said, but they had some things that could be better. But Sean Payton was really able to elevate that team. Kevin Stefanski just had issues with elevating teams in Cleveland. I don't know. I thought that, yes, Cleveland's a bad organization. You can still elevate with that. I just have a lot of question marks. with Stefanski? Where do things land with him? Where are things able to work out? And then I have Todd Bowles here next. Bowles with the Bucks. At the end of the day, very interesting story because he was the defensive coordinator for the team in 2020. Won the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, put on a master class against Mahomes and the Chiefs offense. The Bucks beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl thanks to Todd Bowles. Then he takes over as head coach in 2022, I believe. And then he has makes the playoffs in 2022, 2023. In 2023 is where things get exciting, where this Bucks team makes the playoffs. They beat the Eagles. They barely lose to the Lions in 2023 in a divisional round. You're feeling really good. 2024, you make the playoffs, you lose round one, but okay, we're in it here. This team fought back, grabbing Baker Mayfield. Let's go. This defense is playing very well. Then you have this past season. You're halfway through the season, like, woo, let's go, Bucks. I had them going to the Super Bowl, and then things just kind of stop. Yes, due to injuries, but I think with Bowles, the main thing is this culture and defense are big issues. The culture kind of having struggled to winning games, that's a big issue. This defense as well, they have trouble creating pass rush. I think the coverage is sometimes questionable. And Todd Bowles is a defensive-minded guy. So Bowles, I think that there's a lot to like about him in his resume. But recently, I have a lot of question marks. Zac Taylor with the Bengals, yeah, he made a Super Bowl with them in 2021. I'll give him credit. Great stuff. But at the end of the day, his offense is just very fine. They're good, I will say that. But there's not that. It's kind of very similar to Mike McCarthy, where it feels like that lack of energy, like a boom when you watch him, isn't there. The defense has been terrible under him. Just a lot of question marks with Zac Taylor, to be honest. Then you have Dan Quinn with the Commanders. Kind of an interesting track record. Had a really good year in 2024. Brings his team to the NFC title game. But then has a really bad year this year. Has new coordinators entirely. He moved on from Cliff Kingsbury and his defensive coordinator, Joe Witt. He brings a new coordinator. So in 2024, where you started, till now, you have completely different coordinators. That's a short time. He's a defensive-minded guy. Dan Quinn, the defense has not really been that great. So a lot of question marks about him. And Aaron Glenn with the Jets, listen, I love the hire. I thought he did a great job with the Lions defense in 2024 and 2023. But there's a lot of issues. He pretty much has entirely new staff just after 1 year. We'll see what happens. But that, everyone, is the list here. That is what I have for my head coaches here in the NFL. Really, I think fun list here. Very solid group of guys here in today's league. And I think more than not that there is more, I would say, good coaches and bad, if that makes sense here. Like, even look at a guy like Zac Taylor, who I had in the bottom tier. I mean, he's made the Super Bowl, right? Dan Quinn had a great year last year despite being in the bottom tier. But I hope y'all enjoyed this. I love talking coaches, and I'll catch y'all next time. Take care.